Greetings all. It is February 4th, 2023. What follows is a little bit of a stream of consciousness as I'm trying to work out some questions that I've been pondering lately, having to do with polarization, the theory of a timeline split, and the prospect of an ascension period that, according to many, we are apparently in the midst of. Because there are some obvious questions that at least stand out to me here at the beginning of 2023. So bear with me, please, and I look forward to any of your thoughts and comments. Many people, it seems to me, were counting on the inevitable prosecution of Trump and some of his leading sycophants as a means of quelling the rise of the far right in America. I think under the assumption that that would discredit and undermine the entire movement. However, as I've said many times, I do a lot of reading, and it seems to me that we are becoming increasingly polarized as opposed to less. For example, the tactics that DeSantis is employing in Florida with respect to culture war issues are taking things to another level that is even more extreme and dystopic. The direction now seems to be more clearly fascistic or authoritarian, if not totalitarian, where the state tightly and firmly governs culture. It's quite remarkable because, of course, these are things that in the past Republicans would have railed against, as they did back during the Cold War with the Soviet Union. And now the governor of Florida is openly implementing policies that are reminiscent of what occurred in the Soviet Union, where thought itself was criminalized. So even if Trump and his minions are prosecuted and possibly even incarcerated, the attention now is shifting to other leaders who will not necessarily be tarnished with those crimes. And the culture wars seem to be actually intensifying. Now, one of the reasons I'm commenting on this is because I believe I recently listened to somebody doing a reading, and they were talking about how there would be less division and more cooperation this year than last. And I find that hard to imagine unless there is a radical change in the near future of some kind. And of course, I've talked about the shift from Pluto into Aquarius, which will not officially commence for another month or so. And we shouldn't be surprised, as I've talked about before, if things intensify with Pluto just about at 29 degrees of Capricorn. But it's still hard for me to imagine how these extreme divisions would suddenly disappear. Yes, the harvest of populism is proving to be bitter. The UK is now facing economic growth that will be outpaced by Russia, which is dealing with historic level global sanctions. And the UK's prospects are clearly related to Brexit. But can you imagine millions of people abandoning their positions and flipping to the other side? There may be significant numbers of voters who will be fed up with the antics and will vote, say, Democratic in 2024 as opposed to Republican currently. But I don't see a lot of people switching sides. And even if someone like DeSantis runs for president in 2024 and loses, will the millions of people who would vote for someone like him have a complete change of heart in the next 2 or 3 years? Will their personalities undergo a fundamental change, which in this case would be drastic. I know from my own personal experience, and this is purely anecdotal, of course, I have rarely seen human beings completely flip their personalities ever. There's a few odd cases where people can go through dramatic transformations, but in my experience, that's actually quite rare. For example, I am a much more mature version of myself as a child, but I still have many of the same fundamental characteristics and qualities and attitudes that I did then, perhaps smoothed by the waters of age, or refined, or with more knowledge and information layered onto it, but I'm still fundamentally the same person I was many years ago. So I find it hard to imagine that, for example, 100 million Americans are suddenly going to become progressive after being conservative their whole lives. Now, lately, one of the things that has been coming up to me a lot as I've been thinking about this, and I have no way of validating how real this is, but quite some time ago, I did an episode on the concept of a timeline split, where the Earth would split into different timelines or parallel realities and diverge. And just to refresh your memory, Dolores Cannon talked a lot about this, and she said it would occur over a few years. If I recall correctly, it's something like 5 years, and that it would occur in the early to mid 2020s. I'll put a link to that video in the episode description. And this extreme polarization that we're seeing now, and becoming more extreme, as I'm arguing, would fit into that narrative. If this whole concept of an ascension that a lot of people have been talking about is valid, it's possible that the only way for that to occur, at least from our perspective, assuming we ascend and that we're on that team, is through a mechanism like that. Because I don't see 60, 70, 80-year-old people suddenly becoming liberals. Can you? Is that even conceivable, like en masse? Or this shift is going to take place over decades. That's another possible scenario. Now, another reason I'm talking about this, of course, is because it seems to me that many people feel and have felt or believe that some huge shift or ascension was imminent and that it would occur fairly quickly. I have to say I did myself, like I've had that feeling for a long time, for years. But like I said, I still struggle with this. How do we resolve the paradox of polarization? Like, I'm not suddenly going to become a social conservative. Like some kind of walk-on thing would have to happen to me for that to happen. It's just not even conceivable. And so somebody who's really entrenched on the other side, can they do the opposite? I don't see that happening. So either it's going to take place over generations, which means it's not going to happen quickly, or it's going to take place very quickly, which implies something like a timeline split. Or it's not going to happen at all, or it already happened and we got stuck in the old Earth. So to summarize, it's going to happen quickly, it's going to happen over generations, it's not going to happen at all, or it already happened and we're screwed. Just something for you to think about. God, I thought this was going to be like 4 minutes, and here I am at like 10 minutes. Unbelievable. Take care. Thanks for everything, and I'll talk to you again soon.